Our next guest, Ed Lazear, professor of economics at the Stanford University School of Business, wrote this in a recent Wall Street Journal op-ed. He said, quote, both in Europe and the U.S., structural weakness stems from government excess and slow economic growth. More important than stemming contagion is reversing the policies that created the problem in the first place. Well, Ed is also the former president, as you recall, of the White House Council of Economic Advisors under George W. Bush. I used to talk to him quite frequently on those jobs report days. He's joining us from Palo Alto, California. And Ed, you know, how fitting that you wrote this op-ed ahead of all that we've seen going on in the G20 and now in Greece. What you're saying is that the European leaders are what? That they're wrongly focused on trying to bail out Greece?
Well, I think that's a bit too strong. I wouldn't say they're wrongly focused on it. That's obviously an immediate issue, and it's very difficult for politicians to ignore the fact that the house is burning down and think about clearing the brush for the future. But
right.
Unfortunately, I think clearing the brush for the future is what they do need to be focused on, because the problem is that even if they are successful in saving Greece, that will not solve the problems for Portugal. It will not solve the problems for Italy, nor will it solve the problems for Spain. So fundamentally, those countries have to get their houses in order, or no matter what we do for Greece, they're still going to have problems. So that's really my main point.
I see. But so that means that, you know, they've got to focus on growing their way then essentially out of excess government spending in some of those countries that you named. But how can they do that when, again, the house is burning down, right?
That's right. And obviously that's a big problem. But again, if we look at the historical record and we say, you know, what things have worked in the past, this is not the first country to face this kind of problem.
Right.
And, you know, you look at countries like Turkey. More recently, I gave the example of Estonia, where they were in very difficult situations, and they tightened their belts, made some big changes for the future, and actually turned the economy around quite quickly. It's surprising, because most people obviously worry about what are the effects on the short run of tightening your belt. You know, the big argument is, well, let things be easy in the short run, and then we'll take care of it in the future. Unfortunately, those kinds of arguments are just not credible, and they haven't worked. They haven't worked for Europe, and unfortunately, they haven't worked for us either. So, you know, the problems that we face as we go forward is that, you know, you say, all right, right now the economy is still very weak. We can't afford to look in terms of getting spending under control.
Right.
Problem is, if we don't do that, we're going to affect our growth rates, not only in the long term, but I believe in the short term.
But Ed, how worried are you that what's going on in Europe, if it escalates, is going to affect us here in the United States and our growth outlook?
Well, I think it will affect us. I don't think there's any doubt about it. One of the best predictors of our exports is the rate of growth in the importing countries. So if I want to know how much we're going to export to the UK, the best predictor of that is how fast is the UK growing. So if this affects Europe, and if Europe is not growing, then we are going to find that our ability to export to Europe is going to be decreased, and decreased substantially. And that's going to have an impact on our economy as well. So there's no doubt about it. I don't think the contagion effects are as important as they may be for the rest of Europe, and certainly as some people think they are. Again, I like to focus on the underlying structural problems, primarily because I use our financial crisis as an example for that, and say, what did we do right and what did we do wrong? And when I look back at what we did right, I think it was those things that really dealt with the underlying structure, and what we did wrong was hoping that stemming contagion would solve the problem. It didn't.
Right, and we needed to see more fundamentally what we needed to address here in the United States. Ed, thank you. Great to see you again.